Here is the part no one sees coming, and I'm only saying it out loud because I promised myself I'd stop hiding behind control. 3 sentences, one truth: I built an empire so I would never be abandoned again. Then, the one thing I feared most knocked on my door, carrying a knife roll and a smile. If the thing that scares you starts to feel like home, do you bolt the lock or set the table? Be honest. And if someone looks at the parts of you you keep in the dark and doesn't blink, is that danger or salvation? I live in a glass box in the sky. The kind of place people tour with their eyes and whisper about: floors that don't squeak, counters that gleam, everything arranged like a catalog. The aesthetic of a man who keeps breakable things out of reach. My mornings are a ceremony of armor cuffs, aligned tie straight, phone charged to 100 calendar, blocked to the minute, and every sound in that house is my own footsteps. There is a photo on my dresser I kept face down for years. My family on a good day, my mother still smiling, like the future could hold. I never threw it away, I just couldn't stand it, looking back at me. She left when I was 11, 2 suitcases, a soft apology, a door closing like a promise you can't return, and my father, a man who taught me that vulnerability is a bill you will pay with interest. You know what I mean. By 34, I had exits on my resume and stress in my blood numbers that impressed investors and terrified my doctor. He told me the truth in a way no one else did, no euphemisms, no hand-holding. He said, your blood pressure is a siren, your sleep is a joke, your diet is a dare, and the clock doesn't negotiate. He said, hire a live-in chef, not a TV personality, not a brand, someone who can build you a routine you can survive. And because I respected him, and because the numbers didn't blink, I said fine. I drafted rules to make it feel less like a surrender, strict meal plan: no dairy, no surprises, no conversation, sign the NDA, stay in the kitchen, don't touch the rest of my life. She arrived at 8 on the dot, a leather knife roll slung over one shoulder, curls pinned up like they were always trying to escape, a clean chef coat, eyes that registered the whole room in one pass, not judgmental, just present. She looked at my kitchen, miles of marble no one had truly cooked on, and said under her breath, this is a luxury morgue. I should have sent her away for that right. But instead, something in me wanted to see what she would do with a dead room. She unrolled the knives like a surgeon opened drawers without asking, and somehow chose the right one every time, touched the stove like a pulse, checked the fridge like a mission. And then she said a sentence I still hear when the house is quiet. I don't work in silence, I cook with music. She pressed play and a little jazz drifted through the steel and glass, not the fake kind, the intimate kind that sounds like someone telling you the truth in a language you don't speak. And I hated how fast the air softened. The first week was a negotiation with myself. Every morning at 7:30, there was a plate on the island eggs that didn't lie greens, that didn't feel like punishment. Grains with a point. And next to it, a sticky note in neat handwriting with a line that landed warmer than coffee. Avocados can't fix your blood pressure, but I'm not above letting them try. Today's smoothie contains spinach, blueberries, and my patience. If you skip breakfast again, I will find out I have ways. I didn't respond, not once, but I read every note like a man checking a map. I left the kitchen when she cooked because boundaries are the last trick of a scared heart. Then one morning she handed me a whisk and said, stir. I held it like it was expensive, she laughed. Not unkind, loosen up, billionaire. We're beating eggs, not operating. I felt my face try to remember how to smile, and I let it. Yeah, that happened. We ate together the first time because she told me to sit. Sea bass with lemon, and a sharp little something, fennel and arugula, that tasted like care instead of discipline, a plate that told the truth without shouting about it. I said good, she waited. I said excellent, She grinned like she'd just won a case. Then she asked about my mother, the way someone asks you about a city that mattered to them carefully, ready for a no. I bristled and gave the shortest answer. She cooked the house felt alive when she did. Then I shut the door, and Sophia just rotated my plate and said, "Eat the vegetables before they get cold. They'll forgive you faster than your past will." The audacity, the relief. Pattern interrupt. Then the lights went out. Late summer storm transformer blew, the hum stopped. The glow died. The room felt like a body holding its breath. I found her in the kitchen, lighting candles she had already bought for a night like this, like she had met darkness before and learned to handle it with both hands. We sat at the island while Rain wrote long sentences down. The glass ate in a quiet that felt intentional, and I did the thing I don't do. I told her about my father's journal. It lives in the bottom drawer like contraband pages where a proud man admitted he confused protection with isolation, where he said pride made him lonely and loneliness made him cruel. I said it like a confession to a stranger in a booth, and she didn't blink. She reached across the counter and rested her hand on mine. Not a grip, just weight and heat and proof that I still had a pulse. And I heard myself say a sentence that scared me. "You're dangerous. You make me forget why I built the walls. If it were you, what would you have done? Pull away or lean in?" I wish I could say I chose brave, but old habits are a religion. The next morning I skipped breakfast to prove I could buried myself in meetings like they were a drug, ignored the notes, ignored the soft music, ignored the way the house had started to sound, like a place a person actually lives. That night, she knocked on my study door with a tray salmon, with citrus greens, roasted sweet potatoes, because she had noticed I finished those first, a small kindness that felt like a spotlight, and she asked without flinching, "Was last night a mistake?" I said no. I said, "I think about you," I said. "I can breathe when you're in the room." And she said it, "I love you." I did what a man who thinks control is safety does. I left the room. Pattern interrupt, yeah. I ran. She packed in a way that hurts more than yelling, quiet. Efficient practiced a suitcase in the hallway. Knives rolled, spices capped the jazz still on the counter. Like a heart someone forgot to put back in. She left a note, "I cooked for your body, but I stayed for your heart. When you're ready to use it, you'll know where to find me." The fridge was full of labeled meals like museum pieces of a kindness I didn't understand how to receive. I didn't touch a single one. For 3 days, the house was a mausoleum, and I sat in the garage with the engine off and my forehead on the steering wheel, and I made a sound people with armor pretend they don't make. You know what I mean. Here is the twist, and it didn't explode so much as it quietly rearranged all my furniture. I went back to my father's journal, not the early pages, the entries near the end, the part where the handwriting grows smaller, like the truth is heavy. He wrote about my mother again, not a villain this time. A person he failed to see when she wasn't performing. A woman he policed under the banner of care. The way he managed her time, her friends, her joy. How he called it just love and it felt like control. And then he circled a line, "We don't lose people to love, we lose them to fear." I wanted to throw the journal, but the only thing in that room that needed to be thrown away was my script. Mini call to action, stick around, because what happened next will blow your mind. I cooked. Badly. I watched a video of poached salmon, the same dish she fed me the first night, and stood in my own kitchen like a tourist, pan too hot, fennel cut, like it owed me money, rice underdone by exactly the amount my pride was overcooked. I packed it in a container like an apology you can eat, and I drove to the address my assistant found when she decided my privacy shouldn't outrun my chance to grow. My knock didn't sound confident. It sounded human. She opened with flour on her hands and light on her face, and I held up the container and said the truest thing I cooked. She laughed. Then she saw my hands shake, and I told her the truth before my courage could step out a side door. Running from love broke me. Not loving you. I'm not asking for forgiveness tonight. I'm asking for one more meal, one more chance. She let me in. We sat at a table that belonged to someone who does not worship control, and she took a bite and said, "This is terrible." Then she smiled with her eyes and said, "And I've never loved anything more." I laughed for real, not the social kind, the sound that starts in your stomach and pushes old bitterness out of your shoulders. We didn't fix everything. We gave ourselves permission to start. Weeks later, just when I thought the story had stabilized, she added the twist I didn't earn, but needed. We were making coffee in my kitchen, which had started to look like people lived there, 2 mugs, 2 aprons on a hook. Spices not arranged by label, but by hand, memory. And she told me about a class she taught at a community center. Before we met a program that fed people in transition, folks leaving shelters, folks leaving bad relationships, folks leaving versions of themselves they had outgrown. She said there was a woman who came sometimes with a scarf tied at the nape of her neck, hands that trembled when timers rang, a quiet smile that would leave and come back in the same hour, and they made soup because soup forgives you while you learn. She told me the woman's last name, and the room tilted. My last name. My mother's last name. I stood there with a mug halfway up, and the photo on my dresser flipped itself face up in my head. My mother hadn't run toward money. She had run away from a house that managed her, instead of seeing her a home where love felt like inspection. She was learning to breathe at a folding table with a paper bowl of soup, while I was upstairs in some glass box telling myself a story that made me the only victim. Do you think that's fair, that we keep one version so long we don't check if it fits anymore? Or is it just easier to blame than to undo your own knots? Tell me in the comments, because I'm still untying mine. We drove 2 hours, and we sat in a cafe where the trees outside looked like they were practicing apology, and my mother walked toward me with cautious hope. She didn't look like the memory. She looked like time, a person who had paid for her choices and her silence, and we talked without polished quotes. We didn't rewrite the past, we corrected a page. Enough for me to take the real photo and turn it face up on my dresser. Enough for me to come home and buy a second set of knives and a record player because she told me jazz needs a needle to breathe. Enough for me to admit that control had kept me safe and alone, and that maybe safe and alone is not the prize I told myself it was. The months that followed were not a montage of perfection, no soft focus, no miracle soundtrack, just 2 stubborn people learning a language that has no shortcuts. I still love a calendar too much. I still wake before the sun, like peace is something you can outrun. I still feel the old itch when the plan changes, and she still plays music when I start talking, like a spreadsheet, because rhythm reminds a body it is not a machine. We burned a sauce because we were kissing. We undersalted a soup because we were arguing. We overcooked rice because we were laughing too hard. And we ate every plate anyway, because the point is not mastery, it is presence. Sometimes, she says, we're not feeding a system. We're feeding us, and my chest loosens like a door finally getting the right key. You know what I mean. People ask for an ending tied with a bow, the kind where you say, and then everything was warm forever. But that is not an ending, that is denial with better lighting. Here is the ending I can live with. I stopped rehearsing loneliness. I started practicing presence. I still make the occasional terrible salmon, and she still says it is the best thing she's ever tasted in a tone that makes me feel both seen and challenged to try again. I call my mother sometimes, and we talk about nothing and everything, and I am learning to listen without defending, to ask, without auditing, to say I am sorry, without adding a comma and an explanation. The house sounds different at 6 p.m. Now lids tapping, water rolling, a voice humming over a record that crackles because real things make noise. Let me leave you with a harder question, the kind that can start a fight in the comments and maybe save a dinner in someone's kitchen. We glorify self-protection like it is wisdom. But how often is it just fear wearing a nice suit? How often do we police the people we love under the banner of care and then act surprised when they stop breathing around us? Do you think that's fair? Should love ever feel like management? Should safety be a synonym for silence? Or do we owe each other a more dangerous kind of tenderness, the kind that sets a second plate, the kind that makes soup while someone learns to hold a spoon, the kind that tells the truth before courage runs out? Here is the last image I want you to keep, because this is what I keep when the old script tries to come back. It's late, the windows are fogged from steam, the city outside is a little softer than usual. 2 mugs by the sink, 2 aprons on a hook, 2 sets of knives drying on a towel with water spots we will ignore. She is at the stove humming something I finally recognize, and I am slicing basil with a patience I did not own last year. I taste the sauce, it needs salt. I add a little, it is better, not perfect better. And I look up and say, you were right. She laughs and says, about what? I say, food isn't love, she raises an eyebrow. And I finish the sentence, but it is where love learns our name. We plate the pasta, we sit, we eat, we stay. If you made it this far, thank you truly. Now it's your turn. If it were you, what would you have done the night the candles went out, reached across the counter, or reached for the door? Have you ever kept a picture face down for years and then found the courage to turn it up? Do you think control is a virtue or just anxiety with good PR? Tell me in the comments, argue with me, if you need to share the story with someone who still thinks safety is the same as love. Rate this from 0 to 10 and tell me your city, because the conversation we start down there might be the first plate someone else finally sets.